I've been defending DWI cases here in Dallas-Fort Worth area for about 15 years now, and I've had a lot of opportunities to see where people did things right and to see where they did them wrong. And I'd like to share some of their experiences with you and hopefully educate you a little bit as to your rights and how to react and respond if you're being stopped for suspected DWI here in Dallas-Fort Worth. Understand that a police DWI investigation usually has begun some period of time before the driver was even aware of it. Either there's been a 911 call, somebody's reported they didn't like the way you were driving, or the police have observed some sort of errant driving pattern on their own, and they're now observing the way you're driving. They're following along behind you, and they're videotaping this entire encounter. So generally speaking, a police DWI investigation has begun long before you knew it. There's 3 rules I tell everybody to follow if they expect to try to survive a DWI arrest and prosecution. Rule number 1, say as little as possible. Rule number 2, do as little as possible. And rule number 3, be as polite as possible. Please understand that everything you say and do over here on the side of the road is being videotape recorded from a camera mounted on the dashboard of that police officer's car. He has a hidden microphone on him, and everything you say is being recorded. I've seen people that showed no outward signs of intoxication other than belligerence, and they've been convicted by a jury. I don't advocate anybody driving while intoxicated. I think it's dangerous. I think drunk drivers shouldn't be on the road. And I think the police are out here serving a vital function and getting those that are truly dangerous off the road. Where I have a problem is the people that really are okay to be driving a car and they're getting stopped and asked to submit to a series of field sobriety tests. That unfortunately they make the statement, I can't do this sober, and the jury construes that to mean them saying they're drunk. But the truth is, a lot of these tests that people are asked to do on the side of the road can't be done by a sober person without some level of prior notice and an opportunity to practice these skills. Even the police are given the opportunity to practice these skills and learn them and develop them and hone them and refine them before they're asking people to perform them the very first time they've ever heard them perfectly out on the side of the road. I've seen many instances where a driver, when they were first asked to step out of the car and asked to stand there and talk to the officer, looked perfectly fine, looked perfectly sober until they were asked to do these roadside calisthenics. So I would suggest if you're a clumsy type or you have any concerns that you're not going to be able to do these tests perfectly, simply refuse. The police won't tell you you have the right to refuse these roadside sobriety tests, but the truth is, just like you have the right to refuse a breath test, you have the right to refuse to do them. They'll generally start by asking you to stand somewhere, and usually they start off checking your eyes. They'll hold up a flashlight in your eyes and start tracking a pin, back and forth in front of you, asking you to follow that with your eyes. You don't have to do this. You don't have to do any of these tests. You don't have to do anything but stand there if an officer pulls you over. Breath testing measurement devices are inherently unreliable. Even the manufacturer of the Intoxilizer 5000, which is used here in the state of Texas, won't warranty this device as being fit for any particular purpose, let alone to be used as evidence in a court of law. In theory, a breath testing device works by the lungs filtering impurities out of the blood and the impurities that are caught by the lungs being expelled back out through an individual's mouth. But they've yet to come up with ways of dealing with any residual alcohol left in a person's throat or in their mouth. Dental work can throw these off. And of course, no two people metabolize the contents of their stomach at the same rate anyway. This is why you'll find most people telling you you should not take a breath test. And there's some added ramifications for taking a breath test in Texas. If you take it and the results are excessively high, then the punishments against you, if you're found guilty of DWI, will be much more severe. And you may be required to put an interlock device on your car where you have to take a breath test effectively every time you start your car and drive after that. Furthermore, if there are no breath test results for a jury to consider, they're forced to take a look at you and make their own assessment as to whether or not you've lost normal use of your faculties. You have the right to refuse a breath or a blood test. If you get to the hospital and they're asking you to sign a consent form and say that you're waiving your right to sue the hospital in case you get infected by a needle or something, you have the right to refuse to sign that. Now, a trend that we've had going on is the police are getting search warrants for your blood. Fine, if that's what they want to do, let them do it. Can't stop them. But that doesn't mean you have to give them permission to jab you in the arm. One other thing I want to talk about is oftentimes the police will do a videotaped interview once you're back at the station where they're asking you a series of questions about where you've been, where you're coming from, when you last ate, when you last slept, when you last saw a doctor, how much you've had to eat or drink. And again, answers to these questions are really none of their business. Before they start asking you all these questions, many of them are rather incriminating. They'll read you what's called a Miranda warning. We've all heard it. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you, and so on. When the police tell you you have the right to remain silent, you have the right to remain silent. And your best bet at that point is to just say, I'd like to reserve any comment until my attorney can be present. With that, they have to end the interview. Again, the way to survive a DWI is say as little as possible, do as little as possible, and be polite as possible.